Hello again and welcome back to the third of the pumpkin style arrangements. This time I'm going with a more harvest feel, a more natural sort of autumnal look. If you don't like the ghouls and the goblins and the witches and the warlock, but you still would like to do an arrangement in a pumpkin, then this might be a suitable style for you. Now this pumpkin is a white pumpkin. I probably don't need to tell you that, but it's almost a creamy lemon shade. So what I've gone to do, so last time I did something quite bright and vibrant with very clashing colours, and I thought this would be a beautiful style for somebody that maybe doesn't want to celebrate Halloween or doesn't want to go through that night of ghosts and goblins. This would be a great table arrangement or something to give a gift to somebody, or maybe if you're having a harvest supper or you're getting together with a few friends, then this would be a lovely centrepiece for you to have on your dining room table. Now don't forget to sit it on a tray. I have said before that when the pumpkin rots down, particularly once we've cut it and we've opened it up and the air gets on the flesh, it does rot quite quickly, and you'll get up one morning and you'll have a big blob of a mess on your dining room table. So if it's sitting on a tray, you're going to protect your table and have an easy way of removing it and placing it in the bin. Okay, so my flower combination today has already been cut down short, and it's only because I've done this workshop before. I've made this pumpkin with a group of ladies this morning, but I thought it would be another lovely design to share with you. So I've chosen some yellow Gerbera, and these are easily available from the supermarket. If you can't get florist wholesale flowers like I can, then these are easily available at your local greengrocer, your local supermarket, or you could order them from your local florist. So we've got a yellow Gerbera to start. That's going to be my focal flower. It's the biggest flower and it's got probably the stronger colour in the design that I'm doing today. And I'm almost working with my main flowers in threes. So we're going to place them equally around the pumpkin. So we've got three of those. Then I've gone for an apricot sort of shade rose, and I've picked small headed roses because the small heads are better for the scale of the size of the pumpkin. If we'd gone for a great big huge rose, so this is a really lovely florist grade rose, you can see the difference in the size there. It wouldn't take a huge amount of these roses to create a design, but they're very large alongside the pumpkin itself, so they're a bit overpowering. So I've tried to choose a smaller or a middle of the range head size. So we've also got three of those. And then I've gone with a slightly bigger rose. So this one is yellow, this one another lovely florist rose, a little bit bigger than the peach, but not quite as big as my Gerbera. Then we've got what we call transitional material, so it's smaller bits of flowers to link in the design. And I've gone with a really pretty Santini chrysanthemum, so a small version of the very popular chrysanthemum in white. I've also got it in green, and we've also got a cream sort of shade as well, which is a really good colour link with my pumpkin. So just for you to see, that's what it looks like when it's on the main stem. Again, easily available, a really good autumn flower, and this is the lime green. Gives me an interesting texture and colour and a variety in shapes. I've got a small bit of Gypsophila just to soften the overall look of the design, and little bits of Pampas grass. It's the autumn. Pampas grass at the moment is hugely fashionable, and I've cut it down from one of these great big plumes here. I've actually used this variety here. So it was originally like this, and I've just removed side shoots, wired them together with a florist wire so that I get smaller sections, which are far more in keeping with the size of the pumpkin and is much better for your scale and proportion, which is of course those important principles and elements of design. We've got some barley, dried foliage or dried material again, it's a seed head, And you can pick lots of these things up at the moment from supermarkets as well as a good florist shop. And then we have some dried bracken. Now in the UK, this is a lovely green fern, and as we go into the autumn, they dry and they get these gorgeous colours and this gorgeous shape. And again, I've looked for a variety of shapes. So we've got a frond-like shape, we've got that circular shape there, we've got a line and a pointed shape. And again, that all refers back to the principles and elements of design. Right, now I think I've discussed all the materials with you. Now then, let's have a little look at the pumpkin. You can probably already see, just to save some time, I've cut the pumpkin in half. I've tried to get fairly equal proportions from top to bottom. And this is almost going to be like a burger. I am referring to it quite often as the burger pumpkin. But if you can think of a burger back, so you have 2 bread rolls and then the filling in the middle. This is how this style of pumpkin is going to look once it's finished. So I need to lift my pumpkin lid to about this height, or maybe a bit shorter, and then I'm going to fill in this section here so it almost represents a burger. And hopefully that's how this design is going to look when it's completed. The other style that we did, we had a lid sitting on the top, almost as if it had a little hat. Okay, let's just get that out of the way. Now I've hollowed out just mainly the seeds and the loose flesh that was in the centre. I've left quite a thick band of the pumpkin flesh around the outside. That will help to support the pumpkin and it'll hold it together. If we go too thin around the edge, then it makes your outer shell quite loose and quite flexible, and there's a possibility then that it will collapse for you. Excuse me. Right, let's just have a look at that. Now I've got myself an ordinary plastic bag. This could be some cellophane, it could be the wrapping that comes off your fresh flowers, it could be a plastic bag, or you could even sit a bowl inside there if you wanted to. But I just wanted to create a barrier in between the wet floral foam and the pumpkin, so that there is as least amount of water leaking out from the floral foam into the pumpkin itself, and then that's going to give it the best chance of lasting for the longest possible time. Right, so we're going to put the bag there in the hole, and I'm just going to I'm just going to pop in a full block of floral foam for a moment for you to see the size that we're going to create this design. And if I sit my lid on top, you can see that at that size I have a huge amount of floral foam to cover. Now if you had bigger flowers, if we go back to that rose, if you had bigger flowers and you fill that centre section, then it's going to very much overpower the size of the pumpkin. So for me, that gap in the middle is way too big. And we're almost thinking of that rule of threes again. So the pumpkin base, the middle section and the top section are almost equal in size. So what I'm going to do, and this is a bit of a guessing game to start with, I'm going to take off probably the top just a bit less than a third off the top, and then we can retry that pumpkin. And I think that's probably given me a fairly good gap there. And with the loose bag, I'm just going to push it back in so that we can't see it, but it's still there doing its job of keeping the foam wet, so it'll help it to stop dehydrating. And I've now got a nice secure lid to the top of my pumpkin. Now what I've also got, if you feel that that's not secure on the top, we could also use a couple of the kebab sticks. And I'm just going to put 4 in the top there. 4 little kebab sticks on the top, and then we can almost insert it into the pumpkin flesh so that it gives us that extra little bit of security. and hopefully that will be nice and secure. Now if you're at home and you're only taking it from your workspace to the kitchen table or your dining room table, then you don't need to worry too much about how secure that is on the top. But if you're delivering it and you're going to place it in the car and it's going to wobble around on the journey, you know, you need to make sure that's nice and secure there on the top. Right, so that's our mechanics prepared. That's my base, my floral foam. We've had a look at all the flower choice. Now we'll start to create the design and put it together. Right, now I'm going to start with my larger flower first, which happens to be my Gerbera. But again, if you don't have the Gerbera, that's okay. And I'm going to look at trying to evenly distribute the Gerbera throughout the arrangement. Now, I obviously can't make this design any bigger because I'm restricted to the length that my Gerbera have already been cut. But if you wanted to go longer, that's perfectly acceptable to do at home. I'm going to keep it almost contained within the size and the shape there of my pumpkin. Okay, so if I just spin that round for you, you can see that the gaps in between each pumpkin, sorry, not each pumpkin, each Gerbera is almost the same. It's not going to be perfect, but it's fairly equally spaced out. So for a round design, we need to be able to see something from each side. You could, if you wanted to use fours, and then you would go opposite one another. But I always think that using 4 in a round design tends to give you a very squared off look. So I prefer to work with the uneven numbers. So 3, or you could go up to a 5 and use 5 main flowers. And I've looked to place them in the centre of the foam and the centre of the gap between the lid and the base of my pumpkin. Right, so now next I'm going to do the yellow rose, and we're going to place these in not quite central of the I keep calling them pumpkins and they're not pumpkins. I'm not placing it in central to the Gerbera, so I'm not going in this gap here, which would be the middle. I'm going slightly off to the one side. And the reason I'm doing that is because I have this lovely apricot-y orange sort of rose to go in there as well. And what I'm trying to do is not put these at exactly the same height and angle. I'm going to angle them slightly different so that they're positioned in a more interesting way. If you place them on a very severe line, then you almost have a visual line going around the middle of your design. So I've staggered them slightly. That will help create a bit more interest in the design. Now what I've pretty much done is I've bought my flowers and then I've thought about how I can use them before I started the arrangement. I've thought about how I can evenly distribute them in the pumpkin, and I've thought of a plan in my head before I've started. So I'm very much working within a pattern and repeating the pattern in each section of my pumpkin. So I've almost got a pumpkin split into 3 sections. And if I just turn that round, you'll see that each section has a yellow and an orange rose. And that's really your focal flowers. That's your most important flowers placed in first. What I'm now going to do is use the secondary flowers and the transitional material to connect it all together, fill in all the gaps, and try and still work in a pattern, but one that's as less obvious as the focal flowers were. So now I'm going to go with this lovely white chrysanthemum. And that one happens to be next to the yellow rose. So when you're learning, it sometimes helps to work in a pattern. Once you become more confident and you're more aware of the flowers and how they work and how they look alongside one another, then you can become more playful with the design that you're creating. Now if we just look at this section here and we think again about the principles and elements of design, I've got different shapes. So we've got 3 different shapes here, and then they're 3 different textures, so they contrast beautifully alongside one another, and they have different textures as well, so it creates a much more interesting design. Okay, so let's keep going with this really pretty white chrysanth, and I'm going to break this one down a bit smaller and add them in another few different sections so that we're getting this white colour and this white shape all the way throughout the design. Oh, we've got a little bit of the bag just in the way there, and hopefully we've got a really nice circular shape forming, and there's something as interesting on this side as there is on the opposite side. Now you could just keep going along there with more flowers. I'm going to go now with the lime green chrysanthemum. But you could keep going with just flowers. You could pick up several little bunches and keep working all the way around. But once I've used this green chrysanthemum, I'm going to add some of the really nice textured foliages and the seed heads that I've got. But I appreciate that not everybody is able to get hold of all these interesting bits of material that I've got. So in the garden this time of year, there's probably lots of seed heads. If you're lucky enough to have a garden, you've probably got lots of seed heads, dried grasses possibly. You might have some interesting autumnal foliage with the beautiful reds and oranges. So if you can't get hold of commercial material like me, just have a look around. Go and visit your friends or your family and see what they have. Now that's coming together really nicely there. Now my final flower is going to be the chrysanthemum, and this one is the lovely cream that's got a fabulous link with my pumpkin. And I'm just keeping on going, really trying to make even distribution of the colour, nothing too technical. Now, I quite often say in videos, you might be looking at this as a slightly different angle from me, so you might see more gaps than I can. But from the position I'm looking at it, I'm just working my way round. And because it's a small block of foam in the centre, I don't want to use the stem length too long, otherwise I'm going to poke it through and it's going to come out of the opposite end of the foam. So 1 centimetre is ample in this design, as long as the stems are in far enough so they can take up the water. You don't need to worry about them going too deeply into the foam. Now when you come to water it, of course, the best option for this design is just to remove the lid and drizzle a little bit of water down. Keep it nice and fresh. Okay, that's all my fresh materials in there. Now you could continue if you have more flowers than me. If you've got greenery from the garden, then you can at this stage put some greenery in there. You could even fill in with some natural moss. But I'm going to continue with the few bits of dried material that I've got, because I really think the dried material gives it that lovely autumnal feel and that autumnal look. Okay, let's keep going. So I've wired these onto a florist gauge wire. It's on a 71 gauge, and there is a bit of a tutorial on one of the other pumpkin arranging videos. So if you pop back to the very brightly coloured pumpkin, the first pumpkin that I did in the tutorial, you'll see a very short clip of how to wire it. You could also tape it onto a kebab stick or a cocktail stick if you don't have any wires at home. Right, now my next material I think is going to be these very interesting textured barley. And it's very, very similar to wheat, but we have these little fronds there on the side, or these dried sections there on the side. And these angle beautifully downwards. So this is a great opportunity for me to create some downward movement towards the base of the pumpkin. And what I'll do initially is go round, placing them so that they're angled downwards. Hold on tight so I don't lose the pumpkin. And I'm going to use the ones that are pointing downwards first of all, around the edge. And I'm putting these in, you can probably see I'm going a bit longer with these pieces. And you can probably see with these pieces I'm going a little bit longer so they drape down over the front of the pumpkin. And then I'm going to work some of the other pieces, the straighter pieces, in between the flowers. And again, it's to give me a different texture, that one snapped, let's just get another one. Different texture, it's a really nice shape, it's a different colour. So really good link between my pumpkin itself. And it's, for me, a really good sign of autumn and harvest, which is the theme and the overall harmony of the design that we're trying to create. Okay, so I think we've got enough there of the barley. There we are. And one of my favourite garden sort of material to use in the autumn is the bracken, the dried bracken. And we're going to pop that in again. Fairly circular again, so we get an even distribution. And the longer pieces I'm going to put towards the outside. And just take your time. Now when you get to this sort of stage and you've got a lot of flowers in the arrangement, if you go too fast and you work quickly, then there's a chance that you might damage some of the flowers that you've already placed in. So take your time, work slowly all the way around. Now again, I'm looking to evenly distribute it, so I've got a little bit all the way through the arrangement. One more piece. And you can see hopefully how that's coming together. That's a really lovely shape and style so far. Now really I just picked the Gypsophila because it's quite a soft texture and quite delicate. And I thought it would be a really good link to sort of hold and pull all the design together. I think this is my favourite of the pumpkins. Oh, having said that, I did really like the brightly coloured pumpkin that we did as well. And I really like this one. And I think for a moment, let's just brush the rubbish to one side. I think we're pretty much finished. What do we think of that? I hope you've enjoyed that one. Now what I have done, again, just to create a bit of a novelty factor on the pumpkin, I've done myself a small bunch of Pampas grass and a little bit of the barley. I've tied it with an orange colour bow that picks up on the orange of the rose. And I'm just going to sit it on the top there. I think it gives you that extra harvest and autumnal feel. So, 3 pumpkins. Have a little go. Let me know how you get on and which one is your favourite. If you've got any questions, pop them in the box below in the comment section and I'll try my best to answer. If you want to be notified when I upload a new video, then hit the subscription button and don't forget to click on the bell and you'll be notified when there's some new videos coming along. And we'll see you again very soon. Bye for now.